Welcome to the Apprentice Advantage, a podcast where we discuss everything tech apprenticeships and how your company can start developing untapped talent today. In this episode of our podcast, we'll be discussing skill building in action through training programs. What makes a participant job ready? We're going to find out today. I'm your host, Sheena, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Leah.
Hi. So I'm so excited to introduce John and Jean Lange. So we're really going to talk about you guys as training providers. So tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, we run Apprenti Pittsburgh, which is a training provider for tech. We do development jobs, DevOps, business analyst. We have a whole sort of range of classes we can do. And we've been working with Apprenti to do apprenticeships for 3 years now, maybe, I think. And it's been great so far.
Our boot camps are generally a 3-month experience. We have career changers coming in, people who are adults, who have already done something else with their life, who are looking to move into a different field. And they come in and do this intensive training with us, full-time, daytime during the week for 12 weeks, and then go off into a job. And with Apprenti, it's wonderful because they already have a job when they come in, and they don't have that job hunting period at the end of the course to go through.
Right, that's always the cool part. I know a lot of times whenever someone will go through a boot camp, they're like, hey, we're paying tons of money to go into a boot camp. We're not guaranteed a job. What is the difference between going to school, having a degree, and not having a job, and going to a boot camp and not having a job, right? So I think it's really cool that we collaborate, or you collaborate with us, Apprenti, to guarantee them a job day one as they're starting training.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so today we're talking about skill building in action. So what are some of the foundational skills that you focus on in the training, and why are they so essential to tech apprentices?
No matter the course that you come into Academy to go through, whether it's a business analyst course or a software development course, there are some core foundational skills that we're concentrating on for people going into teams in tech environments. And they are basically communication and learning how to learn. These fields that people are going into are ones where you can't learn the job once and then be good for the rest of 40 years of your career, right? What happens instead is that you learn how to learn in this field, and how to say when you don't know things, and how to struggle through a situation where you're unsure of how to do something, and make progress, and ask people for help, and get through it anyway. And it doesn't matter whether you're a business analyst or a software developer, you still need that same foundational skill. So that is something that we really concentrate on in the course of Academy. And super important to that is the communication aspect. We have people work in teams for huge portions of the class. It's not so important that they learn the skill of learning how a loop works in C#, a specific programming language. What's important is that they learn the skill of talking about the thing they're trying to do, hearing other people say how they think it should be done or how it works, and expressing when they're confused or when they understand something and can contribute.
And one of the things that's different about a boot camp, specifically ours, is, for a lot of schooling, you're used to, I do say 40 hours, which would be a week of our class. I do 40 hours of learning in classroom. There should be a test at the end that verifies that I can do all of the things that we talked about in that week. For instance, we learned to do binary trees or something to that effect. But the thing that we are looking for that really helps someone go is not, help someone on the job, is not that they can do a binary tree or do any of the sort of tech test problems that people get on interviews. It is, are they learning the stuff faster than they did the previous week? Are they asking better questions? Are they finding all of the ways that they need to get around roadblocks to go faster? So our success in a week is someone is doing better than the previous week in learning, because 12 weeks is not a terribly long amount of time. They're going to be on a job way longer, and you don't pay someone for a knowledge job just to have static knowledge right at that moment. You pay them because you expect them to continuously learn and get better at what they're doing. So they're going to be learning thousands of hours on the job, not just the 500 some or whatever it is with our 3 months. And so we want people to be able to learn as fast as possible.
So that's good. It makes me think about when you said you offer a 3-month training. And a lot of employers really struggle with the idea of understanding a candidate will know all the things for the job or be fully prepared for a tech role with only 3 months of training, right? So can you kind of walk us through what those 3 months actually look like for an apprentice?
I want to start out by saying that I have 20 years of experience in tech as a programmer, as a trainer, in a variety of roles, and I'm not going to be ready for any job that I start. There's no new job that I start that I'm going to be like, I know everything I need to know to get this done. I know every language they use. I know the business domain. I know everything about it. Learning is part of the job. So it's not that 3 months isn't enough. 20 years of job experience is not enough. That's not the skill, knowing everything when you go in.
Yeah. To go on that, like I will do contracting here and there. I was pulled in. I have 25 years of experience programming and writing curriculum and all of this. And I had to learn a new domain of audio, DSP work, all kinds of new things that I'm learning constantly. And what makes me good at my job is not that I have 25 years of experience programming, because a lot of my older experience is in older languages. It's that for 25 years, I've been learning how to learn and practicing learning continuously so that I can be better at that job, because I'm just better at learning than I would have been. And so the way we do that in Academy is a typical week, and it changes over time. So like the very first week, we will have, for say a Monday and a Tuesday, have maybe a 50-50 split of the instructors talking to the students working on what we just talked about, and then coming together with like the split being half instructor-led, half students just working on what they're doing with instructors going around helping them on day one, through to Friday, where, well, Thursday really is the instructors spend a half hour saying, here's the problem. Now you have all day to work on this problem. We'll be around for questions. We will help the whole time. But we go from half the time to just, here's the setup, continue, to partway through the course, instead of us giving out, the first few weeks, we have exercises that are exactly leading one into the other, to the other, to the other, that are all planned out. And then we go into further ones where we're saying, instead of us providing the curriculum, the actual like text that they're learning from, we say, okay, here's a tutorial on this technology. Try to go through it, and we'll be there together and we'll all go through it together.
That's what learning looks like on the job. There's not going to be someone holding your hand and say, all right, you have to learn this new framework, Ruby on Rails.
Right.
Let's sit together and I'll walk you through it and give you a presentation, give you exercises. That's not how it works on a job, right? That's week 1 of Academy. But by week 9, we're saying, you have to learn this technology. Here's the basic tutorial for that technology. Go ahead and do it, and then we'll talk about it.
Yep. And then they go through 3 weeks of different technologies that way, where it's, here's the tutorial. What worked for you? What didn't? How did you have to learn other ways? We answer questions the whole time, still have sort of that framework of, we talk more at the beginning of the week and talk less in front of the class at the end of the week, but constantly push people toward learning how they learn and what works for them. So some people will find YouTube videos super useful. Some people will be like, I cannot watch a video and learn from it. And so we work to let people discover how they can teach themselves at work. So when they go on the job, no job is expecting you to like put code in day 1, but they are expecting you to be able to learn their systems and figure out what's going on, and be able to figure out and be able to help yourself get into the work over the first few weeks. And that's a good
point, because I do know, fun fact, there was a guy who said they looked at a lot of YouTube videos that like Khan Academy online on their own, and they got a really high paying job in tech, right? Mm-hmm. But you're like, okay, not only can they learn and do really well on YouTube and Khan Academy and all those things, but you're actually adding in extra learning, soft skills, critical thinking skills. So can you tell us a little bit more about that throughout those months?
Yeah. It's actually something we tell people, that if you feel like you can learn how to be, say, a developer without us, if you have that motivation and can do it, great. You don't need us to do it. Now, Apprenti gives so many helpful things, including connecting to an employer, but the real benefit, and we tell this to students all the time, is that you have a cohort of people all going through the same thing together, and learning alone, you can do that anytime you want, any evening, anytime that you're not doing something else. You can work on learning on your own. You can't work with a group unless that group exists. And so what we do is, as Jean said, we try to have people work in groups as much as possible to work with that communication, because there's such a difference between knowing what you want in your head and being able to say it out of your mouth. The words are different, right? You see it in your head in one way, you have to explain it to someone else, and that's really hard to do. And it's actually one of the things that's really hard for self-taught people to do, because they're not used to doing that kind of thing. And it's not only tech that does this, right? Like, you might be really good at cooking, have like problems describing what you want with a new recipe to someone else, because that's not what you normally do. Normally you cook for yourself. So that's one of the main things we do, is have people work on communication and figuring out how to say what they're trying to do and get their thought process out to other people in an understandable way.
We do often get people coming through Academy who have tried learning on their own and gotten to a point and then felt stuck. They didn't understand something and didn't have someone to understand. They didn't understand something and they didn't have someone to explain it to them, or they reach a point where they need more structure provided to them to keep them going on something. And at that point, they come to us and often do really well.
Yeah, I'm definitely the kind of person who, like, I can't learn from a YouTube video or from Khan Academy. I need to do, like, I learn from doing. And that's one of the things I really like about the Apprenti program and boot camps in general. So I know, like, with like a tech, like apprenticeship and a tech role, like you do have to have that technical knowledge, but also you're doing a lot of like projects. So what kind of role does like kind of like hands-on, like project based like training have in your program?
A huge role. That's most of what people spend their time doing, is working on a project. We have a set of projects that we do in every course. John was saying, one exercise leads into the next and teaches you some foundational blocks that will be used for the next one. Each exercise has some trick to it, something that'll get you. There's one early on about providing change, like a cash register provides change. And the trick in that one, you can plug your ears if you don't want to be spoiled, is that money is different from other numbers when you're using programming languages. And if you get punched in the face by that because of this exercise, you will learn it a lot better and remember it a lot better than if we just tell you that this is a fact, that money works differently. You can run into some real bad money errors if you try to just treat it like any other number in programming.
That is another thing I learned a lot from, my mistakes.
Yeah. Another thing is, so we do project-based learning. Like, we say, hey, basically make an answering machine, but on the computer, where people type instead of leaving a voice message. But it basically acts as an answering machine. You leave messages and then the person can retrieve them. And you don't need to do that at work. You don't need to make an answering machine or like a message system at work. But the act of being given something that's hard to do, because at that point it's hard for students to do that project the first time they see it. It is them figuring out, working together, talking to each other, even trying to explain what they're trying to do. Like, oh, we need to store the message someone wrote, and then we need to be able to get it back. But now we need to be able to store like 10 messages. How do we even talk about that in terms of programming? So everything is a project, everything is code they're working on, except the thing that they produce is not the learning, right? The learning that they're doing is the act of doing that, right? Like, being good at work is not, again, going back to cooking, you making macaroni and cheese doesn't mean you're just good at macaroni and cheese, right? Like you could be good, you're learning lots of different skills in making that food. And as you make different foods, you become a better cook, but you're not like, I am great at just doing pasta, right? Like you gain a whole set of recipes that you've done, and you're able to do other kinds of recipes because you've seen similar things before. But what you were learning while cooking was not how to make a dish. You were learning, here's how I have to cut things up. Here's how I have to prepare things so it's ready to go in at the right time. Here's how I have to pay attention so that I don't burn this while I'm cooking this other part, right? And when you're making a whole meal and you want everything to come out together, there's all kinds of learning that goes into that is not just, here's the recipe. It is, here's how you actually do the recipe. And it doesn't matter. Work gives you what the recipe is, right? You don't care what the recipe is whenever you're a programmer. You're just like, oh yeah, I'll do that. But I know now that I have to do these things to make sure it will work right and everything comes out right. And that's what they're learning with these projects.
At Academy, we're never grading your macaroni and cheese, the final dish. We do not taste test it and say, 8 out of 10, right? We don't actually need the programs that they're making. It is not important to us to have a working game of Battleship at the end of week 1. What is important to us is as they work on it, how do they break the problem down? How do they get started? How do they turn English into code? How do they work together and hear each other's input and questions? How do they overcome frustration? Those skills that they're learning along the way are the things that they're learning in Academy. And the game of Battleship is incidental. It can be fun to put on your portfolio, and we often find that games are really motivating to people. They want to keep working on them and put more cool things in and make it something that they can show off and feel happy about, right? The projects we do in every class are different depending on who the students are and what they're interested in. But we often find that games are very appealing to
Who wouldn't want to learn how to build a game, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and what's interesting, specifically about that one, that's a week 1 project that we do often, and you'll have people at the end of it will say, I didn't even finish it. All I did was ask you questions about how to do this and how to do that, and then another team has seen programming before and they got it to work. How, like, they obviously won, but the person that's learning to ask questions is doing better in the course. And everyone finds it because we go so fast that it doesn't matter what your experience is in tech beforehand coming in, you're going to hit the wall of too much knowledge coming at you. You can't possibly hold it all. Because the useful thing to learn how to do is to say at work, hey, I'm stuck. I can't do this thing. Can someone help me? Because a lot of times at work, it could be that you just don't have some knowledge about programming. It could be something that you could potentially Google. Most of the time, it is, this is how a thing works at work. And so there is no right answer out there. It is how you do it there. And so you have to learn how to say to someone, hey, I tried to do this thing. Here are my thoughts on it. How do we do it here? What am I missing? And being able to ask a good, fast question that a person can give you a good answer to is really the main skill you want someone in tech to have. Because then if you learn that and you're not asking the same question 15 times, like by the 10th time, you won't have to ask it again, right? And that's fine because then you have harder questions to ask. But if you're good at asking that question, that's what's so important.
Yeah. So, just to switch it up a little, one of my favorite things to do is to attend a Academy Pittsburgh graduation, right? Because not only is this a really cool space, but you all serve a really wide range have a really wide range of candidates that you serve, right? Some have degrees, some do not. Some just came in, never even thought of tech. There's others that's like, hey, I actually learned a little bit about tech, or I did the thing online and I just need a little more support. So how do you accommodate for different people who are in different spaces, maybe those who already have a tech background and those who do not, and have them graduate on the same level?
Yeah, so One is we almost never have anyone come through that is both good at the communication and good at actually coding. Sometimes we'll have someone that's good at one or the other. Sometimes we'll have people that are really good at one or the other, but they're going to learn. Often those are the opposite people, right? And they need to learn from each other. But the part of what we do is we always tell people to not compare themselves to the other people in the class, because you don't know what history someone had to be able to do something. And that means we find a lot of people that have taken language courses, especially like studied English or studied foreign languages, can learn computer languages faster because they've had sort of the experience of breaking down a language into translating, like breaking down languages into their component parts and understanding that these are all separate bits and they have different meanings. And so you put them together in a certain way to make it happy. They're better at making the computer happy because they have that experience. Maybe someone was into Sudoku or some other kind of logic puzzle. And so whenever it comes to the logic of, oh, I need to have this happen, so I have to do this, then this, then this, then this, and they're better at that. But then you have people that are very organized. And when we get into databases, they're like, yes, this makes sense to me. I understand this organization. And other people who are good at coding up to that point get to that and they're like, what is happening? Mm-hmm. And then you get to people who are much more visually oriented, and we get into the second half, which is all front end and there's no longer right answers. It's does it look right, which is suddenly a very hard shift for people who went from there is a right way, a right-ish way, or mostly right way to solve a lot of these problems, to does it look right? It doesn't matter how you did it in the background. It only matters what the final look is. And there are hundreds of ways you could have gotten this look. And there are people that just fall apart at that. And they just have to learn like, oh, either I don't like this, or now it's my turn to feel like I'm lost and figure out how to get over roadblocks and get over these hurdles that are stopping me and learn how to learn. And all these other people that are much more visual and into this and find it fun to figure out the little bits to make something look right, and we're all frustrated by trying to find the right way to do something, are having a great time and have already spent 6 weeks learning how to get over their frustrations and are doing great. And so by the end of the 12 weeks, there will be some people that are probably better at creating a project than others. But there will be people that are better at running a project than others. There'll be people that are better at organizing it than others, people better at talking to others and figuring out what the needs of a project are than others. There are people that are better at making it look good than others. And so we don't try to get everyone to be identical, but we do want to have a whole class being strong in all kinds of ways in what you would want in a team of tech workers.
Something that I like to say to people considering hiring an academy grad is that you're not getting like a cookie cutter version of a person coming out of our program. It's not that every academy grad will have the same skills, the same strengths, the same resume, and the same LinkedIn profile, right? What they will have is the skills that academy teaches them, and they'll also have the skills that they bring in from their life before. And, those skills are going to differ strongly by person and strengths. And they get a chance to explore how that fits in tech as they go through academy.
Mm-hmm.
So considering all of these trainees are coming in, they have different backgrounds, different experiences, so they're not all starting necessarily in the same space. So what kind of like strategies and tools do you use to make sure that they're all job ready by the end?
Yeah, all right. So the first thing that we do is that every class starts at the very beginning. The first 2 weeks are an intro to programming, and we don't assume that you know anything about programming or that you're very familiar with computers or any of that. There's some logic on our application that asks that you understand logical consequences. If this is true and that is true, then that has to be. That's our starting point. But it's not, I have done programming before. And indeed, we get a lot of people through class who haven't. And so for people who have never done programming before or touched it, we give them a place to step in and start doing things. Now that may mean for people who are coming in who are more experienced with programming, for example, that they are bored by some of the things that happen in the first 2 weeks. They already know what a variable is, or how to do math, or what a modulus is, right? But that's okay, because they have things to learn too. So it may be that we challenge them to do more, or learn more, or try different things on the exercises when they're doing them. Or it may be that what they need to work on is explaining their thoughts and verbalizing them to others. That's important too. No matter where you are or how good you are at programming coming into Academy, you certainly have things to learn. And even if you're the absolute best person at programming when you come out of Academy, when you go into your job, you're going to be the worst person there at doing it. So it's really important to get some practice with, knowing how to ask questions and how to be confused and what to do. So we push everyone to that point of failure as we go along.
One of the other things we do is, in the last 2 weeks, we do a project for a client. It's almost always a local Pittsburgh company of some kind, or nonprofit, or school, and they have an actual client that they are providing a project for. And so in that 2 weeks, we have teams of somewhere between 5 and 8. We'll get as many projects as we need to cover the class. And they now have a deadline, and they have a client expecting work. And we've been giving them tools on how to learn, how to work together, how to create a project for the first 10 weeks. And then in these last 2 weeks, people figure out in a group how to work together, because your normal dev team is not just 5 developers and that's it. It is project managers, it is scrum masters, it is business analysts, it is all kinds of other roles in there as well. And even your developers are not always just developer. You'll have someone who's more on the front end, someone who's more on the back end, and so on. And so the students will often split themselves up just naturally as they're grabbing work to do on these projects, saying, I'd like to do this stuff. I'm going to focus on the front end. Someone else will say, oh, great, I don't like doing that. I'll do the back end. And someone else may feel like they're not great at programming yet, especially compared to a couple other people on their team, but they are really good at organizing and making sure everyone knows what's happening and that people are explaining things properly to each other instead of just saying, oh, I'll do this, and not giving any other information. And so by the end of the 12 weeks, and especially those 2 weeks, we have people that are not all identical. They all have found places that they like to work. Sometimes they found places they don't like to work as well, which is totally fine. We want people to come out of Academy saying, yeah, I have an idea of where I might like to be and where I'd like to grow to in tech. Maybe I want to be right now a developer, but I want to grow into a project manager, or I want to be a scrum master because that makes sense to me, and maybe later on I'll be a business analyst or what have you. And we don't have a class of all the exact same person. Everyone is different in what they're interested in, and so they aren't cookie cutters as they come out.
Okay. So I know we know the value of hiring an apprentice because we're doing the job, right? But that's not always the case. All throughout Pittsburgh, I know a lot of our employers are like, hey, we understand that there's a need for these entry-level roles, but why would I hire an apprentice versus hiring someone with a 4-year degree, right? So what advice would you give an employer who is struggling with the idea of buying into apprenticeship or hiring an apprentice?
Well, an easy answer for those employers is that it's good monetary value, right? You can hire an apprentice for that first year for less than you would pay someone that you were hiring outright. I think that's an easy answer to give to a lot of employers there. But also, what you hire a person for is something important to think about, because there are some skills. I don't think we caught this part on recording, right? I'm doing it with some skills are hard to one. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. But also what you hire a person for is important, because there are some skills that are very easily teachable that people can absolutely learn. It's expected that you'll have some training on the job as part of what you're right? And there are other skills and strengths and traits that are difficult to teach to a person. It takes a lot longer for them to learn that.
And when you're saying easy and difficult, you're talking about how much a company has to pay versus the results they get
Yes.
for that. How much time it takes, how much money, how much expense it costs a business to train a skill. Because almost all skills are trainable, but it's what does it cost the business to train that skill?
Yeah, right. And as an example of that, if you ask a room full of developers if they could train someone to do programming, they're like, yeah, absolutely. Of course I can train someone to program. I learned it. They can learn it too. I know how to teach someone how to do this. But do you think that you could teach a person to be a morning person?
Absolutely not.
And, there are some skills that you gain by working some other jobs and going through them, like, customer service or being willing to be wrong or, easy talking to people that you don't necessarily pick up by going through college. If you think of a fresh college grad versus someone who's been a bartender for 10 years, you're gonna have a difference there in how they interact with people and think about responsibility, for example, right? And so when you hire a person, you should be trying to hire for the things that are going to cost you more to train into them, right? You want them to already have the skills that are going to cost more to train. In our hiring culture, we often use schooling, like having gone to college, as a substitute for, yes, they can do the things that I need them to. Because it's really hard sometimes to tell what skills a person has or what they're like. But if you could hire a person who fits your company and your needs really well, and then train them to do things like programming, right? You can get a much better fit than if you hire for the things that are easy to train and then find out that they don't fit in other ways or don't have the skills you need in other ways.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we really see this is, I don't know if you've ever worked retail, but because Black Friday is coming up, retail focuses on this time of year. This is like the busy time. Now, the thing is, a place like American Eagle, they hire a bunch of developers. That is also the busy time for them. And there are companies that do ad campaigns and create ad campaigns for these retail companies. And they need people who understand, when September hits, it's time to work, and we just work until December or January. That's just what's going to happen. And, there's a lot of stress in the job, like on the retail side from this push, and like you have to make all the money that you're going to make that year right then, right? And a lot of companies feel that it is helpful to have everyone in the company sort of understand that. So hire someone that understands already what it is like to be in retail, or someone that knows what it's like to work in a kitchen with a whole bunch of tickets coming and how to prioritize that everyone needs to eat in the next 25 minutes or it's going to be terrible and you've got 30 meals to make, right? Like, those are hard skills to teach. And a lot of times those aren't even necessarily skills that they taught. It's the people that self-selected and stayed in those jobs for any amount of time were the ones that could handle that kind of stress or handle that kind of work and learned how to do those different things, or were motivated to learn how to do that really hard thing of prioritization or the stress of holiday shopping and all of that. Hire for that, because you can't train that into just any developer. You can't just train anyone into that. That's why you hire people, like, again, in retail, they'll hire a bunch of people and be like, all right, these 3 people can survive this kind of thing. We'll keep them. And just, you filter through people all the time and hire for that. And then train them on the development skills, the business analyst skills, the AI skills, the whatever skills you want them to have, because all of those skills are trainable, and your dollar per value ratio there is just way higher in teaching someone how to code or be a developer or how to do DevOps or how to work with ChatGPT or any other of the generative AI models. That's just a way easier thing to spend money on, and you get such bigger returns there than you do trying to teach someone, here's what it's like going through retail hell for like a Black Friday, right? Like, that's just a different experience that it's better if you as a company don't have to pay for that.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like, you can learn a lot in school, but you don't learn adaptability at school.
I don't know if this is persuasive to companies that don't understand that they should hire junior folks or not. Your question sort of presupposed they already understand that they need like entry-level jobs and to hire people into them. And I see in the job market these days that people like want to hire mid-level or greater developers. They don't want to hire entry-level developers.
Right.
So I also want to offer an argument there, right? And I don't know if it's persuasive to companies, but my personal experience of being on dev teams and working on them tells me that having junior developers there is a positive thing for a team. It can sort of breathe life into stagnant things that exist there. And also someone who is asking questions and doesn't assume that someone who isn't blind to the pitfalls that you're just used to navigating around all the time can be really valuable for you in questioning why things are the way they are and improving them. And then also someone who is junior, you're going to be able to train them up in your way, the way that you want to do it there, and have them be sort of really bought in to what's happening there.
Yeah. And I want to, like, Apprenti specifically. So Apprenti calls out some things that they want for employers to do with apprentices. There should be time to learn, and there should be a mentor. Those are the two main aspects. And really, with any knowledge job, a company should be giving the person who you're paying to have this knowledge and paying to be able to learn, they should have time, a couple hours a week, whatever that time is.
Them to be learning.
You want them to be learning, right? Like, you don't want a doctor that stopped learning 20 years ago, right?
Right.
You don't want that to happen. You don't want a lawyer that's like, oh, there were new laws in the last 10 years? Oh, well, I haven't been learning
You're
since
going
then.
to
I didn't
jail,
have time, right? Like, I didn't have time to learn, so sorry, right? Like, that's 100% what you don't want. And so Apprenti calls out these things that every new hire should have for them. Every new hire and everyone at a company should have time to learn when you're working in knowledge jobs and even trades, but knowledge jobs, that's why you're paying them. And it's really helpful for any new employee to have a mentor that they know they can go to and say, hey, I have a question about the company. How do we do this here? How do I get paid? How do I do, like, who do I talk to get dental insurance, right? Like, all of these questions that are just, no one can train them because that's just how your company does it, and it's much easier to have a mentor. So Apprenti calls these things out because that's a much better experience for everyone. But Apprenti is also worried about the apprentice's experience, right? The apprentice has a much better experience if they have that. And so it's called out specifically by Apprenti, but it's something that every company should be doing. And so companies shouldn't look at that as a burden. They should look at it and be like, oh yeah, we do that already. There's no, like, this is not any different than how we normally hire anyone of any level. Senior level needs time to learn, and a mentor just like a junior level does. And so it's not anything extra that Apprenti is asking for. It's really just have what you should have for everyone for the apprentices.
So just have one more question for the day. So with the Tech Council 40x80 and Apprenti, of course, we want to really focus on expanding access to training and apprenticeship programs. How can the tech industry better support initiatives like yours?
Hire people. That the number one thing you could do is hire people. Sure, you could give money to places and things. That means very little compared to just hiring people. Talk to Leah, figure out who you need to hire. Talk to Leah. She'll figure out who she needs to go to get training. Could be us. There are others out there as well. And hire them. And that just makes everything else work.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us for the Apprentice Advantage.
Yeah, and thank you both for coming in. It was really exciting to learn more about Apprenti Pittsburgh today.
Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned because we will be interviewing an apprentice next month. So it's going to be really fun. Thank you.
Thank you.